Hi everyone and welcome back to my Consultant Explorer channel. I'm Charlie and I'm here to help you explore the early career years of technology consulting, help you to be successful at it and show you how to make the most of the opportunities that it can open up for you. I spent 8.5 years at Accenture building the most incredible launchpad for my own career, and now that I'm starting and running my own businesses, I get to choose what I work on whenever and wherever I want to in the world. And that is the kind of freedom that I can help you find in your journey, which starts just as mine did in technology consulting. So an interview with a consulting leader is usually one of the final hurdles of an application process. And it can be one of the most intimidating hurdles too, given the seniority of that leader and the multitude of different personalities that they might have. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips based on my own experience as both an interviewee and an interviewer. And I hope that these tips help you thoroughly prepare and ace your final interview. My tips are categorised into 5 types. Know the basics and more, tailor your energy, be the right kind of mindset, be real, and find human connection. One of the easiest bases to cover off before your interview, if you have a contact that can help, is all the really little questions that you would never want to ask in interview. If you know someone who works at the company that you've applied for, or who used to work at that company, or even who works at an adjacent or competitor company, then have an informal chat with them. Cover off all the really basic questions that you haven't been able to answer from online sources, and ask them from the real perspective too. What does it actually feel like to work there? The better armed you are with this sort of information, the better questions that you're going to be able to ask in an interview. Get your head around the structure of the company that you're applying to, so that you know where responsibilities stop and start for your department. If nothing else, it will mean that you're absolutely sure that you want this role, but it'll also mean that you're able to position your questions much better. It's always easier to stay in the swim lane of your department, but knowing more about what goes on outside of that gives you a much more experienced perspective, more akin to someone more senior in that firm. We'll talk about asking questions in just a minute, but one thing you can do is demonstrate just how much you know about the company by asking really astute questions. The more clear it is that you know what you're applying for, the more clear it is that you really want the role. Okay, on to tailor your energy. The most exciting candidates to interview are the ones that have really infectious energy and passion for the role and/or the company. It's very reassuring as an interviewer to be validated in your own job choice by the up-and-coming generations. So let that energy shine through, and it will mean your interviewer really warms to you. Remember to smile, even if you have to force yourself to. And even better, make sure you have eye contact with your interviewer while you're smiling. People are drawn to the warmth in other people, and so again, it will draw your interviewer to you. Sense how your interviewer is feeling. It's really important to remember that this is the middle of a normal workday for them, and so taking time out to interview you is actually taking time away from delivering on their responsibilities. This might mean that they're feeling quite stressed and they actually might not want to be interviewing you. Be appropriate in response to their energy, or in other words, follow their lead. Don't crack jokes if they're not feeling it, or don't be pushy if they're feeling stressed. Go light-hearted if they do, but stay serious if they stay serious. And remember, you can still always smile even when you're being serious. Now we'll move to be the right type of mindset. When I joined Accenture, I had a really short fact-finding HR interview, followed immediately by an MD interview. And after that MD interview, I was offered the job, and I really hadn't been expecting to be offered it. Upon then starting work at the firm, I found out that the MD that had interviewed me had decided that I had get it factor. And I learned that this get it factor essentially meant that there were elements to the way that I think that would work really well in consulting. That experience tells me that interviewers are often looking for mindset or ways of thinking, and that often trumps experience or performance on the day. If I were to try and sum up my get it mindset, then I would say it's both logical and insatiably curious. So if that sums you up too, then be sure to show that in interview. In my years of consulting, I did learn that some of the most successful consultants are the most curious ones, the ones whose minds never stop working to solve problems and to overcome challenges. And so again, use your questions to show your curiosity. I actually asked that MD way more questions than they asked me in my interview, so that probably counted for something. Everyone says it, but it is true that there is a certain amount of chemistry factor at interviews. A leader who likes your character and your can-do attitude is going to believe that you're going to be able to iron out any gaps in your skills. And this is particularly important at junior levels, where you're going to need to be able to learn fast and adapt quickly. And finally, but just as importantly, show that you're able to be hyper-aware and respectful. For example, show that you know how to use inclusive language, which really does matter in a diverse industry like consulting, and show you know how to be respectful to your seniors. Your manner in interview will be seen as a display of your manner in a future work environment with colleagues. Next up is be real. Saying you don't know something actually makes you more credible. If you admit that you don't know something that you're not necessarily expected to know, then the next time you say that you do know something, it's going to be much more credible that you do. Explain your experience in words that make sense for your interviewer. That means not using buzzwords and only using simple, plain language, or what's sometimes called weekend language. Everyone knows that the smartest people are able to make really complex things sound simple. So showcase your brains by explaining your experience in such a way that your interviewer just really gets the importance and significance of it without even really having to try. And in particular, explain the link between your experience and consulting, i.e. say how you're going to be able to re-employ what you've learned elsewhere back into the consulting environment. And by the way, I have a video which explains how to make some of your uni experience relevant to consulting, if you want some pointers. Someone once brought it to my attention that my endless questions exposed more about what I was thinking than what I said did. And since then, I've come to believe wholeheartedly that that's true. Your questions in interview will give away lots of your subconscious thought processes. And if you're aware of that, you can use it to your advantage. Obviously be subtle, but ask questions that show that you know what you know. Ask questions that show that you're so invested that you're thinking through all the day-to-day practicalities of you being in this job. It's really exciting for interviewers to find a candidate who is so fundamentally aligned and in tune with this role. Know yourself, what you're good at and what you bring, and be ready to describe it in a self-assured but non-arrogant way, and never over-egg it. Know exactly why the company and or department that you're applying to needs what you bring, and know how to articulate it confidently and convincingly. You can definitely practice this bit in advance if it helps you feel more comfortable saying it, and you should ask your friends and family to tell you what they admire about you too. We don't necessarily all feel naturally comfortable singing our own praises, and so reassurance and practice can help address that. Rehearse lots of answers and key examples beforehand so that they come out naturally when you're asked. You'll be amazed at how easy it is to weave in what you've prepared, even if the exact same questions don't come up. There are loads of competency and experience-based questions online, which are great just for stimulating ideas and helping you remember pieces of your experience that you're keen to talk about. Write down everything you're proud of and practice speaking about each point. You'll be able to draw from your library of responses, even if the questions you're asked are entirely different to what you prepared, because there's usually some sort of logical connection anyway. Really listen to the question that you're being asked so that you can actually answer it. There is nothing more infuriating than a politician's answer that just dodges the question, and infuriating your interviewer is not the aim of the game. It's much better to ask them to repeat themselves if the question wasn't 100% clear, than it is for you to just ramble through an unuseful answer. So now our fifth and final category, find human connection. Research your interviewer if you know their name ahead of the interview, so that you know a little bit about their own experience. This will help you place their questions against the context of their own experience, especially when questions can be interpreted in a few different ways. It'll also give you confidence about what it is that they're trying to get at with their question, and also what they want to hear back from you. Try and find something that you have in common with your interviewer, and start with it as you walk into the interview room. We all say that we hate small talk, but in truth, a little bit of small talk as we enter the room is much more comfortable than silence. And if you're both feeling comfortable, then you're both going to think more clearly. Besides, anything you learn now about your interviewer will help you reach out in the future for a coffee connect if you do end up getting the job. Your goal is to make them see that they want to work with you. The bottom line is, if they would staff you onto their project team, then they're going to recommend that you get hired. If they leave that interview room unconvinced about whether they want to work with you, then they're much less likely to recommend you. And instead, you're going to have to hope that they just recommend you're a better fit elsewhere in the firm. This goes two ways, by the way. If you decide that you don't want to work with them, then they're likely going to sense that. So even if they're not somebody that you would necessarily choose to work with, you need to be open-minded enough to know that there are other leaders within the firm that you would choose to work with and that you could work with instead. You need your interviewer to believe that you want to work with them. So there you have it. Those are all my tips for your final interview in consulting, and some anecdotes about my own final interview experience. I think I'd sum it up by just saying, be nice, be smart, and ultimately be you. I really hope that you found this video useful, and if you have, then let me know by clicking the like button. And if you'd like to see what I post next, then definitely subscribe to my channel. Social media links are below if you'd like those, and if you have any questions or comments, then feel free to use the comments box below and I will do my best to answer absolutely everything. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you all the best with your interview and all of your exploring.